"What is it?" or they say, "I want one." And we're going to hopefully answer both those questions in the course. Eventually they will receive for communion, and we will explain exactly what this amazing mystery is. But at your child's baptism, you made lots of promises. You promised to raise your children as Christians, to bring them to church as often as you can, to teach them the Bible stories and about Jesus, to introduce them in prayer and living a good life. And you're supported in doing this by your church, and also if you go to a Christian school, by that school. But you are, as parents, the primary educators of your children, and never forget that. It's a great responsibility, but it's a great privilege as well. The church and the school and friends and family, they can only do so much. It's what happens at home that really is absolutely crucial. And just as you teach your kids to walk and talk and eat, you also teach them the rudimentaries of the faith. And often parents feel completely unprepared to do this. They might think, I don't know enough about the faith or about Jesus, so I'll just leave it to other people. But you know more than you think, and I'm sure you're all doing a really wonderful job, as good a job as you can. So thank you for that. But now we come to the next stage in your child's spiritual development, and we mark it with two sacraments. Firstly, confession. We understand the age of 7 or 8, or a bit older, to be the age of reason. So it's the age when they can take responsibility for right and wrong. They can take responsibility for their own actions. So that's why we have the sacrament. And then closely following it, First Holy Communion. Now, I'm really grateful to Angela and our fantastic team of catechists for getting you ready for these two sacraments. Angela's been doing this for
a long time.
A long time?
A very long time.
Yeah, I think you celebrated your Silver Jubilee, didn't you, of being the First Holy Communion coordinator?
We're about the 28th year. This is you'll be my 28th year.
She started very young.
I was tiny.
And have you actually prepared any children of people, of parents who you prepared?
I've only had one child of a child so far, but I think I'm getting close again. But yeah, that was quite a moment to see the mum bringing in her daughter, and I'd done her First Communion as well. So yeah.
So you've got the best First Holy Communion coordinator in London. So you know how lucky are we? And we've got a great team of catechists as well who do it voluntarily. Who, I mean, you know, they give up their Saturday afternoons and their Monday evenings, and they do it without complaining too much. So we're really, really grateful to them. So obviously treat them with gratitude and respect. The Saturday afternoon classes are absolutely essential to your child's preparation, and there are only 10 classes. Now some churches do far more than that. We just ask for 10 Saturday afternoons, which is not that much for such a wonderful gift like First Holy Communion. So please do prioritize them. Make sure they're in your diary, your physical diary, your phone diary, on the fridge door, whatever. Just make sure you come to them. Now, of course, occasionally there are reasons why we can't attend. Perhaps there's illness, or there's a family bereavement, or there's a massive snowstorm or something. You know, if those things happen, then just get in touch with us by WhatsApp or by other means. But you will be expected to catch up the session in some way, and Angela perhaps will explain a bit more about that. Because there are so few classes, if you miss more than 2 classes in the course, then we might have to have a little discussion about, is this the best time for you? Is it working this year? Perhaps we might need to defer to another year. That's not a threat, it's just a kind of honest appreciation of the importance of these classes. And the preparation isn't just about the classes here on a Saturday. You could imagine the course like a 3-legged chair or stool. You've got the classes, but you've also got the book. We give them the First Holy Communion book in the new year, once they've done their first confession. And there are exercises to do at home, which Angela will say a bit more about later. And that gives you, as a family, a chance to look at what's been learnt and reflect together on what's being taught. And the other really important part of the course, alongside the book and the classes, is of course coming to Mass. Your child is receiving their first Holy Communion. It doesn't really make much sense if Mass isn't a regular part of the rhythm of your family life. So if you're only coming to Mass on the weekends when the classes are, and then the rest of the time you kind of forget about it, it's not really going to work. So we ask you to please come to Mass as often as you can, every Sunday or Saturday evening, and we sign the Mass attendance card. And we also recognise that sometimes life is crazy, and in particular that work patterns can be very unpredictable. Perhaps the parents are working Saturday and Sunday. If that's the case, there are Masses in the week, like Friday evening, that if necessary you can come to. But we do ask, if possible, that you come at the weekend. Talking of Mass, on the days when we have classes, we invite the children and their families to come to the 5 p.m. Mass afterwards. Now, if you are used to going to another Mass, perhaps the 11 o'clock or the 9:30 on Sunday, just let us know. That's fine. But it's nice that all the children come together in the church. They all sit together for the 5 o'clock Mass on that Saturday. Now, First Communion can sometimes be a slightly stressful time because expectations are always so high, and everyone wants the best possible experience for our children. Now, a long time ago, it's probably well over 10 years ago, there was actually a fight between some of the parents and the official photographer who was taking all the photos. And it got a little bit messy. I mean, do you want to sort of...
Well, to be fair, she didn't take very good photos. We don't use her anymore. But there was no need for rocking. And then we did have 3 mothers actually physically fighting in the school playground. So, yeah, we realised that tempers do get quite frayed. And we just ask that doesn't happen. There's no need for it. We can sort out most things, but you'll be pleased to know we do have a different photographer now who takes much nicer photos. But yeah, there was no need for that, really.
And basically, we're all on the same side. We all want First Communion to be amazing. So let's just keep calm and have respect for each other. Also, doesn't it seem that life gets more complicated year by year? And even looking 10 years back, long before COVID, life seemed so much simpler. And there weren't quite so many messages coming in, and our heads weren't spinning as much. Perhaps it's just because we're getting older, I don't know. But I think there's always a danger of over-communicating, especially on things like the WhatsApp group. If you are unsure of any date or time, just look at your schedule that's hopefully pinned on your fridge door. You know, that's all correct. It's easy for kind of misinformation to be spread through lots of messages and people asking questions. So only use the WhatsApp group if you absolutely need to.
And perhaps give us a few hours to answer it before somebody else answers. We did have a situation a couple of years ago, because we're obviously in here a lot of the time, we're not on our phones. So it takes me a few hours to get back to the desk and do the answering. And 2 or 3 of the other parents had answered this lady's query, and it was wrong. By which time I've had to go back and start deleting things. And then this one particular mother questioned me and went, "No, I don't think you've got that right." And I said, "Well, I think I have, because I'm running the course. I think I know when I'm turning up." You know, so just wait. If you see something, give us a chance to answer, okay, before you come in, just in case you haven't got it right as well. And if you know that we are away, then go back in and say something like that. Actually say, "Look, Father Nicholas and Angela are away. Perhaps we could wait for that answer." Really, there's nothing that urgent that needs to be answered in 2 hours. You know, we can wait. We've got till next May. So we've got time. Nothing needs to be that panicked.
And it's worth remembering, firstly, that Wednesday PM and Thursday, that's kind of our day off, so you won't get replies on those days. And also, we don't actually have a parish secretary.
Us.
Angela is the pastoral assistant, I'm the parish priest. A lot of our work is done in the school, at meetings, other places, visiting the sick. I mean, this last week I've hardly been at my desk, so it does take time sometimes to answer emails. So I'm not trying to make you feel sorry for me or Angela, but that's just a statement of reality. And it's the same for all of us, isn't it? So, one last thing before I hand over to Angela, and we're doing pretty well for time, aren't we?
I was on the verge of St Michael.
Yeah.
On the verge.
But those of you at St Mary's, it's easy to kind of assume that the majority of the candidates are St Mary's students, but do be aware that we have 62 children, and they go to how many schools?
16 different local schools.
So it's not just St Mary's, it's lots of schools.
So if you are sharing anything, particularly I'll say on the St Mary's site, but actually we've got 7 children from Hermitage, so there'll be WhatsApp groups from there too. Do be aware that not everybody is seeing every message. So use our WhatsApp group for this course. We had an incident a couple of years ago where parents from St Mary's were sharing on that group. And that's great, but over half the children's parents weren't seeing it. So, and then they were wondering why no one wanted to come forward and help with the party at the end. And I was thinking, well, because you've missed half of them. So, use our group for anything to do with First Communion, because as I say, we go to 16 different local schools between us, which is huge.
So that's the end of my little first section, so over to you now.
I thought you were going to say that other interesting fact. I love my data, and I went through every single one of your forms, as you can imagine, typing on email addresses and everything. And 80% of your children were not baptised in this parish. Isn't that huge? So only 20% of the children were baptised here. So that's a huge mobility rate. These children have moved around a lot already in their little lives.
And what's interesting is we've done the secondary school forms recently,
Yeah.
and it seemed the majority of those had been baptised here.
Were baptised here. So this parish changes repeatedly, which is really lovely. It's great, and I hope everyone feels welcome here. But what a 80%, 80, weren't baptised in this parish. So I think another 20% were baptised in the UK. Yeah, that's 40. 60% were baptised abroad. Which I understand, because you've got family abroad, you've got granny abroad, you're going to take the baby home, aren't you, and have the baby baptised there. But that's massive for these children. Which leads me to one of my first points, is that I got you all to sign live streaming consent forms and photo consent forms for that very reason, that I'm aware that not all your families, if they're overseas, are going to be able to come to these ceremonies. So we live stream every one of the First Communion Masses. And it stays on our YouTube page indefinitely. So if you want to, you could go back to last June on our YouTube page and you could watch with your child the First Communions from this year. And I would particularly say if you've got a child with special needs, particularly if you've got someone on the autism spectrum, it's useful to go back and look at what a First Communion looks like here. So they actually can see what they will be doing. So that's why we leave them on there. Also, grannies like to re-watch it. You'd be amazed at the number of streams on them, Granny watches them fairly often. So, and we now do have 2 cameras for that reason. So we've got a camera up here with the blue light. And then our second camera, which is particularly good for First Communions, is this one over here. Can you see just above Father's head? That gets the child's face really nicely. That's the granny cam. We got that one first, and it wasn't good enough for the grannies, so we got Granny Cam, so that they can actually see the child's face, which it seems to be keeping the grannies quiet for the moment. So we'll be at drone before long, won't we? Another couple of years, I'll have to have a spider drone going round.
So I'm never quite sure what camera to look at sometimes. It's like a BBC studio.
See, we need a little earpiece between us so I can say Cam 2, Cam 2. But that's just going to look a bit silly. But would be helpful. So I'm going to say a few practical things. You did get your pack, and there's the welcome letter in there. The welcome letter is that really big, detailed letter. Okay, the front page one was really more for the child, but this one here is for you. It's got all the expectations of the year on there, even what we'd like them to wear next May. And if you're not sure, go and have a look at our photographs in the hall, and that will give you a good idea. So, commitment-wise, we need your children here by 3:30 in this side door here. We open the door at 3:15. It's quite useful, at least for the first few weeks, that you bring them to us right to the door. And then Dave will be on the register and I'll be standing there smiling at them. If you've got any questions at that point, can you hold them and WhatsApp me? Because for me at that point, I'm focused only on the children. I just want to get to know the children and get them in there and start teaching them. So hang on to any thoughts. It's very tempting to say, oh, Angela, could we... But then I'm ignoring all the children. And I'm here for the kids. So let's WhatsApp me, okay? Or catch me after a normal mass or whatever. So 3:15, the doors open. 3:30, we start in the classroom. We divide them up into groups. And each of the adults, and I've got about 12 adults that are helping me, they each have a table. Your child will sit at the same table every time. They'll have a saint's name as their group name. We deliberately split people up. We don't ghettoise, so it won't be all the St Mary's people together. It will just be random where everybody sits. I do desperately need to know if your child has got an additional need, because I can make sure that is catered for. Because if I don't know, I might end up putting too many children with too many needs in together without knowing it. So I can make sure they get the right support in there, particularly if they need anything like visual timetables. I'll need to know that beforehand. Otherwise, I'm just not catering for their need, and we would like to do that. We're fully inclusive. So, here's the rub. We close the doors 10 minutes after starting, and that's it. We don't open them again. So at 3:40, the doors are closed. You're too late then to join. So make sure you're here on time. Okay, it's better to be early and drop them off and then go for a coffee or go off shopping or do whatever you're doing than it is to arrive late. As Father says, we've only got 10 sessions, and I only have an hour with them in the hall. So I've got 10 hours. If you're regularly 10 and 15 and 20 minutes late, and I've got 62 children, I can't have people wandering in and out late. It's too disruptive for the other children. So make sure they're here nicely on time. So the group runs as a group would run. We have 10 themes. We base it around this program called We Believe and Celebrate. Now, these books cost £20 each, so I don't buy that one for your kids as well. We buy this one, but I've made worksheets from this one. Okay, so this is the one we use for First Confession. It's always based around a Bible story, and then they do an activity. So for those first 4 sessions where we're getting ready for confession, you'll get a worksheet home with you. Now that's for you to work through with them. And the same in January when they come back, they've made their first confession, they will get this workbook. It fits in their folder. So make sure they bring it every session with their mass book, which you've already got. And I want to see them coming to mass every week holding that little mass book. Because the whole point of this course is to teach them the mass. So they need to have the book so they can follow the mass. And we'll cross-reference what we're teaching them with that book. I'll actually say to them, turn to page 12 and let's read that all together. Now, I'm always very keen to say to them, this is not school. So I'm not looking for perfect spelling or handwriting. I'm the only teacher they'll ever meet that says that to them. And sometimes it's more suitable for them to draw. Sometimes they can draw it. They don't have to write it. So if writing is not your child's speciality, they can draw. A lot of it can be done that way. And certainly when they come to the book, it's up to you and your child how you do the book together. There's a lovely little cut-out church at the back that they all have a lot of fun doing. And then there's lots and lots of spaces where you will help them either stick in a photograph or cut out a picture from a magazine or write something or draw something. But we ask you, there's not a huge amount of work in here for them to do, but we do ask that you keep them up to date. And I, on the WhatsApp group and on their worksheet, have the page numbers that you need to go up to each time. So with one hand, I'm going to say, please keep them up to date, because if they get behind, next year's Easter holidays turns out to be horrendous for you when you have to catch up 70 pages in 2 weeks. So do it slow but steady. The flip of that is don't let them go ahead. If we're doing chapter 1, just let them do chapter 1. Don't let them keep going on through, because it won't mean anything to them. We don't do the book with them here, but I read the Bible story from it. You do the book with them. We do a sideways activity with them, and then you complete the activity in here. So that's your book. It might be worth you now, while you've still got some months ahead, to be looking out for things like their baptism photo, because we have one whole session on baptism, and their job is to come home and ask you who their godparent is and where were they baptised. And it's always lovely if you've got a photo that you can print off and stick in for that. So you could start getting ready for that. Some other things you can do to get ready is make sure that they make the sign of the cross correctly. Make sure they know how to bless themselves with the holy water when they come in. And that's a sign of their baptism. That's a reminder of their baptism. So you can see already themes emerging here. We're going to be pulling things together for them over the year. So make sure that they know what to do with the blessing of the water. Again, we teach them it, but if they're already there, it makes life a lot easier. And then also make sure you're teaching them to genuflect or knee bow when they come into the church. And again, we will do that with them, but it's so much easier if you've started doing that with them. Because I can tell who's practiced or not from the amount of wobbling they do that first session. So they're like little old people, they're all over the place, and you think, no, you're not doing that at normal mass.
It makes us feel quite agile, actually, doesn't it? Because we can genuflect, and they're sort of falling all over the place.
You're better at genuflecting. Arthritis has got into my knees, and it's not so pretty anymore, but I can certainly do it to teach them once or twice.
And
now,
do you think they should, if they're not quite sure of the Our Father or the Hail Mary, would that be a good thing to learn?
Absolutely. So the 3 basic prayers, the Our Father, the Hail Mary, and the Glory Be. And I've actually got over here, Father Nicholas, does this mic rove?
To some extent, yeah.
Natasha, do you want to pass me? Yeah. I've got a little leaflet for anybody that would like to take one home with them on how to pray with your child. Now, you're probably doing this every night already. I'm teaching Granny to suck eggs here. But if you want some ideas, there's some good ideas on here. If you don't already pray with your child every day, now's a good time to start. And if you're not in the habit of coming to Mass most weeks, now's a good time to start. And actually use us as that excuse to your child. Actually say, Angela and Father Nicholas need to see you. So it takes it off of you and it becomes about us. So this is a really good moment to reboot. Because, as Father said earlier, we're teaching them about the 4 parts to the Mass. If they don't come to Mass, what's the point? It's like me getting them to teach them to make scrambled egg and them never eating it. It's like, why are we doing that then? So make sure and keep coming to Mass. We all understand there's weeks when you can't. It happens. But we do have Masses at lots of different times. And that Friday evening 6 o'clock Mass is really popular with families now. And if that works for you, come to that one. because we appreciate that people work at weekends and they do activities. But that's why we have a Friday evening one as well, so you can come down to that, and then you've been for the weekend. So if timings, just look at the timings. So you've got that leaflet, thanks Natasha. The other leaflet I was going to say to take home with you, this is an adult-friendly one really, it's not for children, and it's on the order of the Mass, and we're going to get to that in a moment. And there's a lot of detail on that, and we've come up with that so we don't have to talk to you quite so much about it. And also, there's Google Translate, isn't there? You can hold it over it and you can read it in your home language, and hopefully it will make all the parts of the Mass make a lot more sense to you, because then you're supporting us. So don't forget, you've got your holy water as you come in, you've got your knee bow, and let me just point out what we're knee bowing to, because the children get very, very confused. They think they're knee bowing to me or you. You're not, okay? Then they think they're knee bowing to the altar here, and again, they're not. They're knee bowing or genuflecting to the tabernacle at the back there. Do you see the dome that Father Nicholas is pointing at? So if there's a problem and they're not seeing that, actually say to them, knee bow towards the big cross. Then they'll get it. But it's actually the tabernacle. And the reason they're doing that is because of that red light up there. Now, again, we teach the children this, so you don't need to worry if you forget it. But that's why we're knee bowing, because we as Catholics truly believe that Jesus is present in here. That by the words and the actions and the faith and the Holy Spirit, what the priest does over here is he is changing the wine and the wafers into the body and blood of Christ. And that can't be reversed. So any that are left over are put in the little dome at the back. Do you want to open it so that they can see the brass? And we change the colour every day, but we're going to talk about that in a moment. There we go. Can you see the little gold dome? And then if you open it up, there we go, in the ciborium in there is the Blessed Sacrament. So they are those little white wafers that were blessed or consecrated by Father Nicholas at another Mass. Probably yesterday, actually, because we blessed a lot. You look like you want to say something.
And we'd probably better move on in a minute.
Yeah.
So
Off you go.
have you said everything you wanted to?
I pretty much have, yeah.
Fantastic. So very, very quickly, confession. As you know, there are 7 sacraments, and we are celebrating 2 of the sacraments with your children, confession and the Eucharist. And it's long been thought that before we receive communion, which is such a special holy thing, we should sort of make a clean sheet in our life and turn our back on any wrongdoing or failings or wrong choosing, poor choosing, as we say in our session. So obviously we could just say a prayer to God and say, please forgive me. But the reason we have confession is it's a ritual that gives certainty. We know for sure that when we've been to confession, we have been touched by God's love and mercy. And as well as asking God for his forgiveness by speaking to a priest who's kind of representing all our brothers and sisters, we're also saying sorry to the community in which we live. So rather than going into the theology of confession, I want to just very quickly go through how to make a good confession. It might be useful for you in case you can't quite remember, but also it might help you answer any questions your children have. Confession, firstly, shouldn't take long. Okay, it's not counselling, it's not therapy. Those are totally different things. Confession on a Saturday morning, when I hear them, typically takes 2, 3, 4 minutes. So it's not a very long-winded thing. And normally, just to break the ice, the person says something like, "Bless me, Father, for I have sinned." In your children's case, "This is my first confession," or "It has been so many weeks, months, years, decades since my last confession." I think one of the most moving confessions I heard, and this is not breaking any confidence, is when somebody said, "Bless me, Father, for I have sinned. My last confession was, I think, at the end of the Second World War, around 1945. And rather than being angry or anything, I was just actually got quite tearful. I was, this is amazing. How wonderful that this person wanted to come back and back to this sacrament. So we begin with this icebreaker. And then you simply mention what you've done. You don't have to go into lots of detail. You don't have to mention dates and times and names of people. You're not telling a story. You're just saying, look, I have told lies. I've had an argument with my family. I have been dishonest. I have done this or that. You just say it as it is. And occasionally it might be useful to give some idea of whether it's just a one-off or whether it's something that's a bit of a habit, perhaps a regular thing. And then the priest will normally respond in some way. Again, it's not counselling, it's not therapy, but perhaps a little bit of advice or a sort of summary of what the person needs to do. But in a way, confession is kind of self-diagnosis. It's like holding a mirror up to yourself, and you know exactly what you've done that you shouldn't have done, and you know exactly what you should do in the future. And confession just helps clarify the mind a little bit. Of course, priests have different styles. I don't tend to ask questions unless I absolutely have to. I'll just give a bit of general advice. And then I give the person a penance to say when they leave the confessional. And that's normally a prayer. It might be, say one Our Father or 2 Hail Marys, something very simple like that. But as well as doing that, obviously the person is expected to possibly make a few changes in their life and behave differently. And then the penitent, because that's what we call them, the penitent says a brief prayer called the Act of Contrition, which is basically saying that they are truly sorry for all these sins. And we teach our children one of these prayers. Oh my God, because you are so good, I am very sorry that I have sinned against you, and with the help of your grace, I will try not to sin again. And the children don't have to learn that. They'll have it in front of them at the first confession and all subsequent confessions. And then the priest says the prayer of absolution. He makes the sign of the cross, and the person makes the sign of the cross on themselves. And the key word is, I absolve you from your sins in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Obviously, it's important to stress to your children, firstly, that this is all about God's love and mercy. It's not about being told off. It's not like going to the headmaster's office. Perhaps in the past, that might have been a bit more the sort of the vibe, but that's not certainly what we do here, and that's not what the church encourages today. And also, it is absolutely confidential. So whatever you say, I'm not going to report it back to the parents. I'm sure you'd be quite curious to know what your child says in the confessional, but I'm
the children love that bit.
And the great thing is, I think ever since I was ordained, I'm incredibly forgetful. So I heard about 9 or 10 confessions on Saturday morning. I seriously can't remember a word of what people said to me. So I hope that's a good thing rather than a bad thing. Unfortunately, that forgetfulness has expanded into other parts of life. And the other morning, I came into the church to open up the church. I lit all the candles. I put all the lights on. I opened the side door. I put all the books up. And then I went back to have my breakfast without actually opening the door at the back of the church, and there were various fairly elderly parishioners getting very cold and waiting outside.
And
so
I looked at the CCTV, sat at my office, looked round and I went, why are there people outside the door, Father Nicholas? And he went, I don't know. I said, well, that's a bit strange. It's getting cold and they're fairly elderly. And then I watched it dawning on his face. I thought, oh no, you've forgotten, haven't you?
So that's probably enough about confession.
Well, yes, so I'm going to come now from a child's point of view with it. So we don't use the word sin with the children to start with. We use poor choosing. We actually get them to do this action. Poor choosing and good choosing. We talk to them about the fact they've now got a conscience. From about the age of 7, I think you used this earlier, the age of reason is the age of 7 or 8, which is why we can't do confession or First Holy Communion before that, because they can't reliably tell right from wrong till about 7 or 8. I mean, sometimes it could be 28, but we'll go with 7 or 8. So what we're doing with them for those 4 sessions, we're trying to get them to do what we call examination of conscience. And we give them lists. We've got lists. There's all sorts of examinations of consciences out there. And they start thinking about it. And what I love is we've got all sorts of activities. So before they do their actual first confession, they do things like they write one poor choosing on a white dove, and then they pretend the dove's flown off, you know, and that's it. Oh, it's gone. You know, but you need to say sorry. And we keep coming back to that. But it's amazing the number of children saying, nope, I haven't done anything this week. You think, I think you might have done. Go back. Think again. So that's quite useful for you to be chatting to your child, but not putting them under any pressure to tell you what that poor choosing might be. Because actually you're not going to know when they come to confession what that is that they're saying. And as the weeks go on, we add 2 things this week we'd like you to have done. You know, think about it. Think about school. Think about home. Think about the clubs. What have you done as poor choosing? And we have something called the little box of sorry. Now you'll notice everything's got purple around it, because purple is our sorry colour in the church. And they all get given a little slip of paper, adults as well. What, dream on. Everybody who comes to help me gets a bit of paper as well. And you're supposed to write a poor choosing on there. It's anonymous. They fold it up. They have great fun throwing it into the little box of sorry. And then, bam, it's gone. So I'm trying to get them used to this idea that you say your sorries and then it's gone. And actually at the 5 o'clock mass, we carry this in with us, and then it sits at the front here. All I do with it afterwards, I recycle it into the bin in there. But they don't know that. So there's the little box of sorry. And of course, the lovely thing is, when they come back in January, they've all made their first confession in December. They come back in January and it's missing from the prayer table. And I always say, well, what's missing? A little box of sorry. So, well, why aren't we doing that anymore? Because they don't need to. They can go to confession. They don't need the little box of sorry. So I do gradually introduce the word sin, because I say that's the church word. That's just simply the church word for it. But actually, we prefer poor choosing. So you can be very helpful with that. The other thing we do, everything we do in that hall, we try to translate to something in the church during the Mass. So of course, this is all the penitential act at part 1 of the Mass. So that's why that little Mass book is really useful, so they can get used to standing up during Mass and actually saying that the I confess. So they get used to that. And get them doing this the 3 times. Through my fault, through my fault, through my most grievous fault. So get them to start doing that. If you come to the 9:30 a.m. Mass, for the duration of this year, it is probably better that they don't go out to the children's liturgy, or they're going to be missing these parts of the Mass. So have a think about that, how you can make that work. If you can't make it work, it doesn't matter. But it's better that the children's liturgy children are those younger ones that are going out. First Communion children need to be in here, really, actually watching the different parts of the Mass. I think most of you don't come to that Mass anyway, but it's worth me mentioning it afterwards. And then, what we always say, and Karina will back me up on this one, if any of the children post First Communion want to go back in there, we always say to them, yes, you can, but you must be a helper. Because they've learnt the Mass by then. So they know the Mass. They should be able to sit through a Mass. And in fact, to be fair, I've sat through 10 Masses with them by then. I know they can sit through a Mass. So it's self-feeding by then. So that's the little box of sorry. If we have non-verbal children, we have other ways of doing things. We've got little dark stones for the sadnesses. We've got little shiny ones for the good moments. We swap them over. We've got ways of doing everything, which is why it's worth me knowing if you've got a child who's got communication issues, so that we can be doing it in a slightly different way with them. On their first confession, there are no appointments. It's just drop in. You'll only be here for about 5 or 10 minutes. Father Nicholas will be sitting up here wearing his purple stole or scarf. And your child will have a sheet a little bit like this in their hand. You'll have had that sent home, I think it's week 3. And on one side it's got all the basic prayers, on the other side it's got how to go to confession, just the same way Father Nicholas talked you through. It's exactly the same as an adult one. And then when they come down from making their first confession, and it's a really moving evening. If any of you had children, well, lots of you have had children come through it. It's ever so moving, isn't it? It's quite emotional because there's quiet music playing, and the child comes down, they go over to the Mary altar. The 3 basic prayers that Father Nicholas might have suggested they say as their sorry or their penance will be over there, so they don't have to remember them. And then they get given a simple prayer book to take home as a reminder of their first confession evening. So you can now start to see why we do ask for that donation, because we have it costed to within about 50p of all the things that we provide over the year. So if you haven't made that donation, and you can, even in small parts, please do think about that. If you can't be at ease with that. We will always cover that. But if you can, this is what you're paying for the year.
So anything else on confession?
I don't think so particularly. No. At the end of the confession, and you get a little script on this, so don't worry, we give you a candle on the way in. And so you watch your child make their first confession. They absolutely love that you can't go up there with them. They love it. You have to walk up to the bottom step with them. You do a little bow, both of you. And then you have to go back. And that's when the parents get quite emotional. Because it's a big moment. They've got to start taking responsibility for their own poor choosing. They have to say their own sorries. And then they go and sit up here. And you can see the parents are just so in the zone, staring at them. And it's really quite emotional. Anyway, they come down, they do their penance over here. And then they come back to you, and there's the big hug and all the rest of it. Well, you've still got the little tea light candle we've given you. And the children decide individually, would they like to light theirs here at the Sacred Heart, over there with St. Anthony, or over here at Our Lady? And you and your child go together to do that. And that's a little prayer of thanksgiving that you do as a little family. And then you just disappear off quietly, because by that time we've been showing another child up. So it's just a lovely little process. I must say they change. They really calm down after that, sometimes. Your first one did, Terry. I'm sure Max will be fine. They really do. You know, they're quite sort of skittish to start with, and that first 5 o'clock mass is like a long distance flight. It's something else. At the end of it, it looks like we've been flying across the Atlantic for the amount of mess and stuff and everything everywhere. But actually by May, they're all sitting there absolutely perfectly. So do leave them with us for the 5 o'clock mass if you can. Because they grow up massively. In that first confession, they really, really do come back in that January, and they're quite different. So it's the grace of God or the fear of one of us, but whatever it is, it works. So yes, that's probably all we need to say about confession.
And basically, just to kind of recap, it's something really positive and beautiful. It's not something to be scared of. It's all about God's love and mercy. In fact, one writer said that every time I went to confession, I'm kind of being reborn in a way. I'm leaving behind all those bad things. I'm starting again. And it's absolutely confidential. So just make sure you stress all those things if your child gets a bit nervous. Now, it's 5 to 7, and we've got about 20 minutes or so to go through the Mass very, very quickly, so that you have next Monday free.
Right, this is a 101 now. So because we'll be out at 10 past, I'm telling you, it's 10 past.
I'm going to just begin, if I may.
Yeah, go on.
The way the church is set up, it always looks like a theatre, doesn't it, and a cinema. In fact, sometimes when I go to the cinema, I try to genuflect when I leave my seat, because it just looks like the church. But the kind of impression that gives is that you are just passive spectators, and my job is kind of to entertain you and keep you occupied, and you just sit there, and that's all you have to do. That's not what the Mass is all about. You are as actively involved as I am, or the reader, or the server, or anyone else. And if you think about it, there are lots of different things that we do during Mass. Even if you're sitting right at the back of the church, we're gathering to worship God. We are listening attentively to the Scripture. We are responding in our own way. We are also offering ourselves with the bread and the wine, asking our lives to be transformed. And we are receiving the great gift of communion. And then we are being sent out, not just to go home and make your breakfast, but you're being sent out with a mission for that week. So there's a lot going on in that 40 minutes. We're not just sitting there as if there's nothing to do.
So at different points in the Mass, Father Nicholas is talking to us and we're talking back. There are other times where we're talking to God, and there are other times where we need to make sure there's enough silence that God's talking back. So it really is like a zigzag, going backwards and forwards continually, which is where it differs from a theatre, because that's where it's just being done to you. So if people say to me, oh, I just find Mass very boring, I immediately think, well, I don't think you're understanding what's going on, because there's a lot going on, and maybe you're not building enough into those periods of silence. We've struggled with silence now. And in fact, when we came out of COVID, somebody offered to put Wi-Fi into the church for us, and we said no. And he was quite shocked, and we said, no, this is the only place people disconnect now. For 40 minutes in a week, you're disconnected. And we want to keep it that way. And that's going to be even more important for your children, because they can't remember. I can remember a world where we weren't connected. Some of you possibly can't yet, actually, but most of us can. But for your children, they're not going to know what being disconnected feels like. So you're going to have to teach them. And actually coming to church is the ideal place to do that, so that you can actually focus and clear your mind. And just for that amount of time, be in the presence of God. So, having said it's not a theatre, I now want you to imagine it's a bit of a stage and where the action's happening. And if we have done our job properly, by next May, if you were to walk into this church late during Mass, you would be able to know exactly what part of the Mass we are at by what you're all doing with your bodies. So this is part 1 of the Mass, part 2, part 3, and then back here for part 4. Now, do you want to go over to where you are?
Are we going to get dressed first?
We could get you dressed for Mass. That's a good idea.
Begins, so.
Come on over. So this is interesting.
As you know, I wear vestments during Mass, and that's partly because I'm playing a particular role. I'm not more important than all of you, but I am meant to be representing Jesus Christ. Even at the words of consecration, I'm using his words. I don't say this is his body, I'm saying this is my body. So I need to dress in special clothes, and I'm kind of distancing myself from what I would normally wear. And part of the idea really is that I'm kind of slightly losing my individuality, my personality, and I'm putting on Christ. So I put these vestments on which date back really to the time of Christ, the first century. So the first item is called the amice, and I suppose it originated as a kind of hood, because when I put it on, I bless a cross which is on it, and I put it over my head. So I'm putting on the helmet of salvation, and then I put it around myself like this.
You didn't have a cincture.
And then I put a long white garment on called the alb, and when I put this on, you might think that a lot of people still wear this in many parts of the world. You'll see what I mean in a minute. So a lot of people in the Middle East, parts of the Mediterranean, would wear a long white garment like this, and Jesus himself would have worn something vaguely similar. And then I put on what's called the cincture, because we like giving lots of funny names to things in the church. It's really a kind of belt. And one of the things the belt symbolises also are the ropes that were used to bind the hands of Jesus when he went to his passion. Because, of course, the cross, Good Friday, that's always in the back of our mind when we're celebrating the Mass. And then I put on this garment called the stole. It looks a bit like a scarf. It's my kind of badge of office as a priest. So anything I do as a priest involving blessing or doing a ceremony, I will wear a stole. Baptisms, weddings, funerals, blessing a house, confession, Mass.
All this usually goes on out of sight, so it's always nice to be able to show you what's actually happening and why.
And then I put the most visible vestment on. It's called the chasuble, which comes from the Latin word for little house, because I'm kind of covering my entire body with this big vestment. So it's like putting on a house.
And as Father Nicholas says, this is partly to take away his personality. So the Nicholas that's underneath, what he likes, how he jokes, all the rest of it is supposed to be gone, because he's now just here as priest, or in persona Christi, in the place of Christ.
And by the way, today is the feast of St. Michael, so today we were wearing our special St. Michael vestment, which has this rather striking picture of St. Michael on the front.
Actually, it came from Poland. If we've got any Poles in, they do the absolute best vestments in Poland, and also they do the best communion clothes. So, well, Ireland's pretty close behind, to be fair. But Poland, if you're definitely going back at Christmas, then definitely get your communion bits.
So we better do the four sections of the Mass. So first of all, we gather.
So we start at part one, the introductory rites. And Father Nicholas, why don't you pretend to be the priest and be in the right place? So this is number one, and this is as we've arrived. And so at this point, we're standing and the priest is standing. It's almost like the welcome at your house. Imagine you've invited me over for dinner. This is the front door bit. This is the hello, good week, bad week, how are we doing? This is the welcome, and we're mirroring the priest. So we're standing and he's standing. And then we come to the final bit of that, and so in there we do the penitential act. We say sorry for all our poor choosing, and we do what we call the collect. We end it with that. And the collect is the same prayer that is prayed everywhere around the world at Mass that day. Now, because obviously there's Catholics all around the world, it's a lovely thought to think that 24 hours of the day, that same collect is being prayed. It's collecting us all together. So in Australia, it's already tomorrow, and they're praying tomorrow's collect already. When we go to sleep, somewhere around about India, we'll be praying the collect, and when we have Mass tomorrow morning, Australia's gone to sleep. And that's the whole point of it, is that around the world, we're all praying all the time.
And then we come to the second part of the Mass, which is called the Liturgy of the Word. And it's all about listening to the words of Scripture. Typically, on a Sunday, we would have one reading from the Old Testament, the first part of the Bible, a psalm, a kind of hymn, a poem, which we kind of respond to. We have that response, we say. Then a second reading from the New Testament, perhaps a letter of St. Paul or St. Peter. And then finally, we all stand and listen to the Gospel. And although these writings are very old, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 years old, they are still touching us today. They are still of great relevance. And we need to imagine these readings not as dry, boring readings from the past, but it's God addressing us on this particular day. And often there's going to be one word or one phrase or one lesson that we really need to hear on that Sunday.
And Father Nicholas then does his homily or his sermon, where he talks for about 3 or 4 minutes normally about what we've heard in the Gospel. And at this point, we've been seated. We were standing here, and now we're seated. And this is like the bit where we've now been invited into the house. And what do you do to make people comfortable? You sit them down. We do better listening when we sit. So we've been sitting for most of this bit.
And we stand for the Gospel as a mark of respect.
Because that's the actual words of Jesus that you're hearing. So that's why we stand for the gospel. But then we sit back down again to hear Father Nicholas's sermon. And the whole point of the sermon is to try and make what really that book, the Bible up there, is over 2,000 years old. In some parts of it are 4,000 or 5,000 years old. So I wouldn't like to say they're not relevant, because they are, the messages, but the language maybe isn't. And also it doesn't address quite a lot of the modern things that we all have to talk about. So for example, Jesus' writings are in there, but Jesus didn't actually say anything at all about IVF or antibiotics or homosexuals. He didn't actually have anything to say about it. But we do. We live 2,000 years on. So church tradition keeps revisiting the messages and the message and interprets it again and again for us in 2025 Uxbridge. So what we've just heard in that gospel, it might have been about goats and sheep. Well, there aren't any goats or sheep around here. But what does that actually mean then for us in Uxbridge in 2025? And that's what his sermon will be about. Bringing it up to date, same message, but more relevant to us today, which is why they spend a lot of time in training school, so they know how to keep it the same message, but up to date.
And then after the sermon, we all stand and we say the creed, which is the statement of our common faith. And actually this year is the 1,700th anniversary of the creed that we use. It comes from a big meeting of bishops in the year 325. Sometimes the language sounds a bit kind of complex and obscure, but it is a basic, accurate statement of what we believe. And then after that, we remain standing. We have the bidding prayers. We pray for all the particular needs. I mean, the whole of the Mass is a prayer. The whole of the Mass is a bidding prayer, really, but we actually name any particular needs or particular sick people or those who've died within our community. And then we all sit, and it's the third section, the liturgy of the Eucharist, which is all focused on the altar. And the offertory is actually one of the most important parts of the Mass. It's where I offer the bread and I pour the wine into the chalice and I offer it. Often it gets rather ignored. Perhaps you're singing a hymn. Perhaps you're just sort of sitting down and having a quick look at your phone or your newsletter. But the whole point is that together with the bread and the wine being offered, we're offering ourselves. We're offering any particular joy we've had that week, any particular challenge. We're putting all those things in the cup and on the plate with the bread and offering it to God. And just as he's going to transform the bread and the wine into something really special, we ask him to transform all of our lives.
We used to pass the collection basket round at that point. You might remember that before COVID. Now we don't do that for germ reasons. But it was quite symbolic at that moment, because it's a little part of ourselves. When you give £1 into that collection, that's £1 that you're not going to get back. You're giving it to something else. And you've earned that through your work of that week before. And so you're actually giving of your time. So it was quite a symbolic moment when the baskets used to be brought up, but for germ reasons we don't want to go back to that. But actually it's a bit of a shame we've lost it, because that really made us present at that altar at that moment as well.
And then we come to the Eucharistic prayer, that long prayer that I say, and everyone is kneeling normally, and we consecrate the bread and the wine, which become Jesus' body and blood. And we explain this to the children, of course. We love the children to use the very long word that describes this mystery, transubstantiation. In other words, after the consecration, it still looks like bread, it still looks like wine, but what it really is, that's changed. It's the body and blood of Christ, hidden under the appearance of bread and wine. So this amazing thing happens at that moment.
And we have all sorts of child-friendly ways of doing that. So we talk about, I've got little toy frogs and tadpoles, and I say to them, have you seen this change? Did you see this change? And they, no. I said, oh no, what about me? Do you think I was a baby once? And yeah, I think so, but you didn't see me change. No, but you believe it. Yeah, okay. What about the caterpillar and the butterfly? And I got these little toy butterflies and caterpillars. Do you believe that was once that, but you didn't see that? No. Okay. So we can believe something we haven't seen. Yes. Right. Now. Now you can believe it then. So we do it really slowly over those 4 or 5 weeks. What we do is we do practice with an unblessed host. Do you want to show us the Tupperware pot? So if they come home to you and say, I've made my first Holy Communion, they absolutely haven't. They absolutely haven't. But we try to make it as clear as we can to them.
So if it's consecrated, it's in a shiny silver bowl. If it's unconsecrated, it's in a plastic Tupperware box.
It's stored in my Tupperware box. They're all unblessed. They're kept at a side table. But we do practice with the children so that they are used to building their throne for Jesus, practice bringing their hand round and putting it in their mouth. And it takes away the nerves of the day. Also, it means they're less likely to have an incident on the day, which, can happen. Which is why I needed to know if any of your children were celiac. Because then I can make sure that they get a low gluten host, because we do have them. And they're square. So our gluten ones are round and the gluten-free are square. So you do need to tell me so I can make sure we've got the right host for your child. Now, if your child is getting very anxious about this at that point, you just have to tell me quietly or WhatsApp me, and I will put some of those unblessed ones in an envelope for you, and you can take them home and you can practice at home. Because I realise children get very anxious about things, and that's okay. We can work around that. So we will practice 4 times with them here. But if your child needs more than that, or you want to practice before we practice, if you want to prior learn, absolutely fine. Just tell me, and I'll give you an envelope with them in. But do keep stressing to the children that they haven't made their communion, and that they still come up to communion with their arms crossed like this until their first communion day.
And 2 quick things. Try to avoid calling communion, you're going to receive the bread or the wine. Yes, it is bread and wine at the beginning of Mass, but it's good to get used to calling it the body of Christ or the Eucharist or Holy Communion or the Blessed Sacrament, just to underline that change that takes place during the Mass. Obviously, on their first Holy Communion day, as we do at all Masses, they'll only be receiving under the form of bread, so they'll only be receiving the host. They won't be receiving from the chalice. They won't be receiving the precious blood. That's mainly partly practical reasons, but also reasons of hygiene.
Yeah, absolutely. They will be so nervous on that day. Can you imagine giving them a chalice full of consecrated wine? Like, that's not a disaster waiting to happen. So we don't do that. Now, and
actually, you receive everything just by even receiving a tiny fragment of a host. You receive the whole Jesus. They're not actually having any less.
Only getting 50% of Jesus. They're getting 100% of Jesus, and they're not going to get 200% if they took a sip of the precious blood. So don't be worried about that. On the first communion day, they will kneel down actually on this kneeler, and we move it into the middle, and they'll come forward one at a time. So plenty of time. We take all the time in the world. I always say to you at that final parents' meeting, they have worked really hard for this, and so have you. And you'll have family coming in from all over the place, and the outfit will be amazing, and all the rest of it. Take our time. We're just going to take our time. And they come up one by one, and it's beautiful. And they kneel down. And we always say to the families, you'll get a pew each, and then the rest of the pews are just open seating. So there's always plenty of room. Always. I know some of you have already swapped. Some of you might want to swap. The only Mass that's really, really full at the moment is the first Mass on the first day. Lots of people wanted to move into it. So we've done what we can, but that's now full because we've only got 20 pews here, and I've got 18 I had 20, but I'm now down to 18 at that Mass. It means there's less room for you all. So I need you spaced out a bit, really. so that you get room for your families and friends. And school friends often want to come. Teachers from the school want to come. So we're always full. And Jacinta and Nicola, over here, give us a wave. They do the music for us on the day, which is absolutely beautiful. So it is a really wonderful, wonderful celebration. I'd say go back and look at them on YouTube. It's wonderful. Now, we've booked the photographer already, and Dan, the photographer, will be roving all over the place. What we do with him is you don't have to order anything in advance. I send you a code by email and WhatsApp about 4 or 5 days after your first communion. You click on it and that gives you access to the photos. So it's not open access on his website. And then you can just order what you want. And they stay on there for years. So if you order just the basic ones and then you get more money in 2 years' time, you think, I want to go back and order more, they'll still be there on the same code. But the actual moment of First Holy Communion, he stands behind here, and that's why we have to have an official photographer, because we couldn't have all of you swapping and changing. We need one person who does not move, and that's Dan, and he stands here and he gets the most amazing photo of your child at the absolute moment of their First Holy Communion, with their little eyes looking up and their throne built. It's absolutely beautiful. And so, yeah, I only wish I could have had it for my own son. I always think, what would I have wanted? And if I would have wanted it, I want it for your children as well. So,
now, we haven't done the fourth part of the Mass.
Go on.
So let's just do that. I know time's nearly running out. But at the end of Mass, after communion, we are then sent out. And it's the shortest part of the Mass. After the announcements, I give you the final blessing. Then I say, go in peace. And that's not like a school dismissal, right? Class over, off you go. It's actually very important. Now that you've received Jesus in Holy Communion, now that you've listened to his word, now that you've done all this praying and offering and worshipping, now you are being sent out to be Christ's feet and hands and tongue and eyes and ears. Spoiler alert, that's really the end of my first communion sermon. I always say that. So, yeah. But it is really important. We don't just receive communion just so we feel nice and holy and then forget about it. We receive it so we can then go and do God's work. And that's the fourth part of the Mass. So, part 3, we've been kneeling for most of it. And then part 4, we're standing again because we're about to be sent forth back out into the world. We've come, we've been strengthened by God's word, by Jesus' body and blood, by being part of this community again. Because I think everybody feels like that. You come to Mass and you go out feeling a little bit better. And that's also that community feeling. It's time with God and it's time with everybody else. And you go out back into the world ready to be a good Christian again next week. It builds you up. I always say to the adults that I'm training to be Catholics, I always say it's a little bit like if you said you were a football supporter, but you never went to see a match, you never caught match of the day, you didn't know how your team had done, you didn't have the shirt. Well, actually, you're not much of a supporter, are you? So it'd be a little bit like that if you said, well, I'm a Catholic, but no, I never pray. I never go to Mass. Yeah, I don't mix with other Catholics. You'd start to think, well, actually, are you getting the real strength from being part of that then? You think when you go to a football match, how strong you feel as a group. It's exactly the same in here. It builds you up. And then it sends us back out. This fourth part is sending us back out into the world again. Now, is there anything else we need to mention, do you think?
I don't think so, no.
Guess what? We got a little surprise for you. Oh, yeah.
Oh, the colours. Yeah, you didn't talk about the colours. All the different colour.
Okay. I was going to say, we've given you a lot of information today, but I've got a special surprise for you.
There is a special surprise.
We've actually been live streaming this, so it's available on YouTube. You're not, most of you won't be in it, your backs of your heads.
The backs of your two heads.
Hello everyone, yes. Anyone watching us on live stream. So you can now look at it again if you want to go over anything. Absolutely.
So because we're aware that we're giving you a lot of information, if you want to go back and watch it again, it will stay on our YouTube page. Or if, like my son, he says he lives overseas, and he says, I miss you, Mum. And I said, well, why are you missing me? Just go on YouTube. You won't miss me.
So very, very quickly, Everything is colour-coded in the church, and we like our colours. We have it on the altar, the tabernacle veil, and what I'm wearing. So we have various colours we wear at Mass. So a white coloured vestment is for big feasts and celebrations, so Easter, Christmas, and many, many saints' days like St. Michael. So it's a happy colour. And then most Sundays of the year and kind of weekdays when there's no feast, we call it a feria, we wear this green colour. Green is a colour of hope and growth. So it's kind of your everyday kind of Christian life, just getting on with it and hoping that God is at the heart of everything we do. Red we wear not very often on a Sunday. We wear it for Pentecost, the Feast of the Holy Spirit, so it kind of represents fire. We also wear it on Good Friday because it reminds us of the blood that Christ shed on the cross. And anyone who was a martyr, who died for the faith, when we celebrate their feast, we wear red. Purple we wear as a sort of sorry colour, penitential colour, especially in the seasons of Advent and Lent, when we are preparing for the great feasts of Christmas and Easter. And we also often would wear that at funerals, although very occasionally we wear black as well, since everyone else is wearing a colour of mourning. And finally, my favourite, or at least Angela's favourite, rose-coloured vestments.
It's not rose, it's pink.
Rose-coloured vestments. We wear this on 2 Sundays of the year, in the middle of Advent and the middle of Lent. If you mix purple and white, you kind of get pink. So it's a little refreshment from all the penance and all the preparation, and a sign that Christmas or Easter is not far ahead.
Now in the classes we have different colour tablecloths for the altar, for the prayers in there. So it's always worth asking your children, what colour was the tablecloth on the altar? And we always try to see if we can catch the priest out. I always say to the children, right, we know it's pink this week, or we know it's green this week. Let's check that everything's gone that colour. And of course you can see up here that it was St. Michael today, so it's white. Everything's gone white, and it's white again tomorrow because I think it's St. Jerome. So we're white, so we're already prepped up for the morning. So the year is marked out beautifully by colour. And don't forget, you've got things like the bells that are ringing, the incense that's going. We do like to use all our senses in the Catholic Church. So part of what you can be doing with your children is drawing that out of them, noticing with them what's different every time they come. Because they're suddenly becoming more involved in the Mass. It's not just a hollow building, it's actually changing, it's organic, it's on the move all the time.
Now, let's just do a quick poll. We could stay another hour and I could do a session on the church's history. Anyone interested? No, I'll let you go then. So thank you so much for coming. And we've done 2 sessions in one. So you can now kind of go and have a nice meal next Monday.
Now, just before you go, final thing to say, please do let Dave know if you have not had an email from me. I have sent 2 now, and he's got the dates. So we need to have email contact with you so I can send you codes and all sorts. So check with Dave. Also check the spellings of the names at this point. I'm about to make all the lanyards for the kids, so I want their names correct, and also for the certificates at the end. So make sure the names are correct. If you want to swap dates, again, speak to Wayne or Dave, and we can annotate it on there. So we've got the working list. Check and see if you've swapped. Take photocopies if you want. If you didn't do a live stream consent for me, I desperately need that. If you didn't do a gift aid form for me and you've given donation and you pay tax to the UK government, please come and speak to me and we can fill out one of those with you. If you don't worry about it, but it is worth quite a lot of money to us over a year. For every £1 you give, we can claim back 25p from the taxman, and it doesn't cost you anything. So it's worth quite a lot of money to us. So if you have donated, you haven't done me a form, come and see us at the front. Natasha's here at the front as well. But thank you ever so much. I thought it was better to keep you a bit longer tonight and then you're done. Is that all right? Thank you for listening. Take care and God bless.